Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. I will just do a little bit of housekeeping and read our acknowledgement of country, and then I will hand over to Beck McPhee, so it won't be long. So hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ange, and I'm the Membership and Community Coordinator here at Diabetes Australia. Today's webinar is with Beck McPhee, who a lot of you may already know. Beck is an accredited practicing dietitian and health coach with over 20 years experience working with people living with diabetes, and works with us at the United team here at Diabetes Australia, along with writing articles for our magazine and newsletter. If you have any questions at all throughout the webinar, please pop them in the Q&A area or the chat. I'll keep an eye on both of them, whichever is easiest for you. You'll find those both up the top on the menu bar there. It's wonderful to see you all here today. There'll be some familiar faces there. We could see all your lovely faces. But this is the first Conversations webinar we've had since launching our newly revamped national membership program, United. So welcome, everybody. Today's webinar is being recorded, as I've mentioned, and will be available on Diabetes Connect soon. So if you can keep yourself on mute, if you don't want your video turned on, you can turn that off, which most of you, I think we all have that off. If we do have time to speak to you in person, we can bring you off mute. And you can also use the raise hand function, which is also up the top there if you're wanting to do that. I'll now read our acknowledgement of country. Diabetes Australia acknowledges the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this country. Today, I'm coming to you from Nipaluna country, the Palawa people in Lutruwita, Tasmania. We recognise their connection to land, waters, winds and culture, and we pay the utmost respect to them, their cultures and to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. We recognise that Australia is made up of hundreds of different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander groups, each with their own histories, culture, language and belief systems. Their relationship with country remains the utmost importance, as it is the foundation of culture, family and kinships, songlines and languages. Diabetes Australia is committed to improving health outcomes for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people affected by diabetes and those at risk. And with that, and with the little appearance of one of my cats, I will hand over to Beck, obviously dinner time. So enjoy, and I'll hand over to Beck. Thanks, Beck, for joining us.
Thank you. Your fur baby looks like it's getting better if it jumped on the desk.
That was the second one, so that was not the second one. Yes.
Oh, yes, more than one. Oh, you're lucky.
Yes, we have two.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. And whilst tonight is about managing carbs during the silly season, I won't be doing all the talking. Tonight is about you sharing your experiences and stories. I always learn, and from people living with diabetes. Always over the past 20 years, I've learned a lot from you as well. But I do have a set presentation. If there's not so many questions, I can go through tips and tricks. But before I even go through that, the festive season or any special occasion is about enjoying yourself. I'm not here talking tonight about saying you can't have Christmas. That's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm sure you've had many well-intentioned loved ones telling you what you can and can't eat. But, if you're celebrating just Christmas and maybe New Year's Eve, or maybe 2 or 3 occasions from December 1 to January 31st, well, then you don't have to worry. But if you're the sort of person that has a lot of social functions, and they tend to clock up, and that's where we have to all be mindful, not just if you've got diabetes, myself included. So if you find that you're the latter, where you're celebrating more than 1 or 2 special occasions, well, then tonight you might find that some of these tips and tricks work for you, because what we don't want you to do is become disheartened about your blood sugars and or weight. Then there's no point celebrating. So we want you to enjoy the festive season, but just have a little plan in place, just as you would when it comes to managing hypos. I'm sure you take your hypo kit everywhere, for example. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me share my screen. But also what I'd like to do, let's see if I can do it. The screen, here we are. Oh, that's my screen. You can see my screen. Whoops. Hang on. Can I do that? Presenting Teams. Here we go. Oh, no. Save. from beginning. Can we see that? Hopefully we can.
Yes.
And yes,
Yep.
okay, fantastic. So before I go through that, I just want to make sure I can see the comments. I can't see people's. Hang on a sec. Ange, do you mind if you put it up? I can't, like when I put up the presentation, I can't see any of the chat. And that's a bit of a pain because I want to see what people are saying. Is that possible? Thank you. Okay, fantastic. So thank you. So before I go into it, I wanted to ask you all, do you have any questions or comments about what you do during the festive season, or maybe some concerns? Maybe you don't want to repeat the same thing that happened last year, or maybe you do have some tips and tricks that worked for you. So before I get into it, I'd like to ask you all. So feel free in the chat to type in anything. You might say, I'm freaking out, or you might say, I've got it sorted, but I'm here just to see if I learn anything new. Any comments? I'll just sip my tea. Or maybe you just want to sit and have a listen. But these, look, the evidence suggests that we need to modify our carb intake to therefore reduce blood sugars, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what it's based on. But this is based on a lot of years of experience that I've done myself, but learnt from other patients. Okay, so it is from the evidence, the food recommendations, but the sneaky little tips have come from myself and patients. That's the things that we've got. They're the things that we're going to remember. So let's get started. And then I don't think there's a question and answer there. Have a look. I can see a red dot. Oh, here we go. Yes. Renee, tend to go to sandwiches as tired and overwhelmed and need to change this. Okay. And then Pauline says, find it hard when grazing, how to bolus. Okay. These are two really good points and common points. So, Renee, when we are tired, sandwiches are really easy to make. So I guess what we can think about is there anything else that you can make that doesn't take a lot of time that won't impact on the blood sugars as well? And sandwiches are okay, but it's putting it into context. Is that's what's happening over the festive season? So you're missing proper meals. One thing that people can do, and I'm not a huge fan of them, but those ready meals are actually there for a reason. And if you can go for meals that are less than 30 grams of carbohydrate per serve, then you're okay. And those portions are pretty small. So if you find that you are tired and you're not having proper meals, that's my interpretation of the comment, then you could do that. Or maybe you'll learn a few things from here, different recipes or ideas. And Pauline, find it hard when grazing. That's a real trap, especially with type 1 diabetes. And I have got some tips here when we've got the first thing I'm going to talk about is carbohydrate amnesia. So, Pauline, I can really relate to this. Who's done this? You're standing at, the party, it's very social, you're having a chat, and it's very easy just to linger around the table and graze. And we know that most parties will have a lot of high carb things, chips and crackers. There's a lot of different crackers now, isn't there? And it's very easy to graze. And that's fine if you're doing as a one-off. But as Pauline said, if you haven't accounted for insulin and you're grazing in between meals and you haven't bolused, then that's when it can be a bit of a problem. So the first tip to do, so if we go back to the presentation, what's going on there? Well, I do remember it anyway. So the first thing to do is to stay away from the table. And I have to do this myself as well. So I'll take a small plate and then you leave the table because it's just so easy just to keep grazing and grazing and grazing. So out of sight, out of mind. So put whatever you want on the plate and then leave. The other thing you can do is look for some of those lower carb options. This could be a tip for you also, Pauline, or anyone who has type 1 diabetes and not accounting for it. But even with type 2 diabetes, if you're finding you're having too many carbs, it's going to come up in the blood sugar reading anyway. So what you could do is go for low carb options. So when I say low carb, anything less than 10 grams of carb per serve generally does not impact blood sugars. Now, when I say generally, I've only seen 2 people in my career who had something of about 8 grams of carbohydrate and it impacted their blood sugars. So never say never. But in general, if you can go for snacks that are less than 10 grams of carbohydrate, whether you bring a plate. So if you're being invited to a party and you know there's not going to be anything that you find will be suitable, then bring a plate of some of these options. I'll go through them, or go for these options if you see them. So less than 10 grams of carbs, fresh seafood, so oysters, smoked salmon, mussels, prawns. Okay, we in the summer season, so prawns tend to be a popular one. So pile your plate with seafood, right? So just pure protein there. Cheese and meat platters. So we're not talking about weight today. We're talking about blood sugars. Okay, so cheese, some deli meats. Okay, also low carbohydrate. I just wouldn't go for the cheeses with dried fruit. I find them just why. Don't infect the cheese. Leave cheese the way it is. Olives and charcoal vegetables, so like your eggplant and capsicums and olives. Veggie sticks, so more of the celery sticks, a little bit of carrot, not too much, because the carbs can clock up if you're eating a lot. It could be snow peas, capsicum, with a low-carb dip like guacamole. Tapenade is an olive paste or tomato salsa. Berries, so strawberries are plentiful at the moment, very, very cheap. Chicken pieces, very simple and easy, or meatballs. And what was the last one? No, that was the last one. So you can see that the theme here is a lot of protein options. So then you can feel okay with grazing and not impacting the blood sugars. I always tend to bring something like this to parties anyway, because I love cheese and I don't want to just snack on crackers, for example, or chips. So keep that in mind. That is that's your go-to when you're trying to keep the carbs low between the meal, or you're finding that eating too many carbs. The other thing you could have, this is my favorite salad, and I've mentioned it before in webinars, is my caprese salad. It's an Italian salad, and it's the color of Christmas, but also it's summer. It's sliced tomatoes, and in between the slices of tomato, put a slice of bocconcini cheese, and in between that, you put a basil leaf, so you layer it, and then drizzle olive oil and balsamic vinegar and a little bit of salt. Or you can just put the tomatoes on a plate, scatter with the little bocconcini balls, the cherry ones, and scatter it with basil leaves, balsamic vinegar and olive oil. The balsamic vinegar acid, so whether it's vinegar, lime or lemon juice, can lower the blood sugars after a meal. So there's a little trick. You've also got low carb options, so tomatoes and basil, super low carb, and then you've got the cheese, virtually no carb. So that's a beautiful salad that you can pile on your plate as well. So let me just see if there's any other comment, new posts. Okay, here we go. Oh, Mick, cold beer helps eliminate my hunger pains. Is this worse? Do you know, Mick, that's a really good point, because no, I think it's a good strategy if it's kept in moderation. If it's a low-carb beer, then it's not going to impact you. The only thing I would be concerned about is alcohol. And excuse if you already know this, but I'm explaining it to everyone. But alcohol in general can lower blood sugars. And if we've got hot weather plus alcohol, just be careful of that. But that's a great strategy, because beer will fill you up. And if you find that helps you with grazing less on carbs, that's fine. Okay, beer in moderation. So just because you've got diabetes, you can have a couple of drinks. It's absolutely fine as long as it's low carb one, not a problem. So can you see that different strategies work for different people? For me, I know that the sparkling mineral water, the gas, fills me up, and that can help with hunger pangs. And I will go into that tip of hydrating, because sometimes we think we're hungry and we're actually thirsty. So yeah, look, if that works for you, Mick, a beer is not a problem at all. Pauline, especially when adding alcohol to the mix. Yes. Let's talk about alcohol now. It is in one of my slides, but I'll go over it now. But alcohol, as I said before, it can make us hungry, and you're more likely to graze. So then we're more likely to graze on carbs. So the tips to sort of think about is, if alcohol's the issue over the festive season, choose the times where you want to have some drinks. Not a problem at all. But if there's more, like I said, than 2 parties, then you might be the designated driver if you can't trust yourself. Or if you're not the driver, then take some of the drinks that have virtually no carbs or alcohol in them, so your mineral waters and things like that. Otherwise, then, yeah, we can get into trouble. Because I know myself, if I've had a couple of drinks, I am more likely to eat more. And then sometimes you can have, again, that calorie amnesia because you've had a few drinks. You don't remember what you've eaten. And again, we don't want you to be disappointed over the festive season. We want you to enjoy yourself. So that's the second one, isn't it, Ange? So the thing I wanted to say, as I said before, is to choose your treats. So what I tend to do, and this, how can I say this? You know, when you go to a few parties and you always know there's someone who really puts on a spread and you know that the food's going to be super. My best friend Kim is like that. She always puts on the best cheese platter, seafood, and that's the time where I don't drive and I enjoy myself. But you know how maybe there's a couple of other parties and you think, oh, look, the food's a bit, then that's when you might choose to be the driver and or take a low carb platter and just eat very, very simple, because it's not worth it. If you're not really enjoying the food, what's the point? So be a food snob. Think quality, not quantity. It's not about you having diabetes, which tells you that you can't have it. It's about choosing the times where you want to enjoy yourself. And so this is another point as well. Has anyone had this thought? Because one of the biggest barriers can be our mindset. So if you say to yourself, you shouldn't eat this, you go to a party and you see the spread and you've said to yourself, I'm going to be low carb tonight because I had a treat the other week. And if you say to yourself, you shouldn't do this, have a think about one of the first words you learned as a 2-year-old. The answer is no, isn't it? So you're parenting yourself. And when you parent yourself, this will lead to rebellion. So think about a time where you have said, I'm not going to do this tonight, and then you do the opposite. And I've had many patients over the years who get so frustrated with themselves, and it's not them that's the failure. It's just human nature. There's no resistance unless there's force. You've put force on yourself. You told yourself you can't, or maybe it's a well-intentioned loved one who told you, oh, you shouldn't be eating that. And you think, oh, yes, I can. So mindset, we can't just have a behavioral strategy. We need a backup thinking strategy. The best way to think, and everyone's different, but here's an idea, ask yourself a question. Because if you ask yourself a question, you have an option of yes or no, and you're giving yourself a choice and control. When people tell you you can't, you have no choice and no control, but you do have choice and you do have control. So by asking yourself a question, you'll think about the reasons why you really don't want to. Do I really need this? Okay. Or you might say to yourself, this is what I say, I already know what it tastes like. Think about maybe the goal that you're trying to set. I want to feel healthier this festive season. So if you give yourself an opportunity to think about it rather than tell yourself, you're less likely to overdo it. Can anyone relate to that? I know I can. Let's see if there's any other new posts. Yes. Okay, here we go. Karen, this is really good. Let me just have a sip of my tea. How to bolus if it's a rolling meal, i.e. they keep coming around with canapes, type options every 10 to 15 minutes, and you have no idea what is coming next. Sometimes 2 carb canapes in a row, but not always. How often to bolus? Yeah, that's a good one. Similarly with a 3-course meal, where each course has carbs but is eaten 40 to 50 minutes apart. How to bolus? That's a really good point. Has anyone ever been in that situation? Karen, is there ever been a time, because I'm sure you've had diabetes for quite a few years, everyone is different with how they do this, and especially with using the square bolus too. I mean, if you've got, a fatty meal, then a carby meal, it can be really, really hard to predict what's going to happen. Karen, has there ever been a time where you've done this and it's worked? Because it seems to me with this sort of situation, it's a big guessing game, isn't it? One thing I would ask, I'll let you type if you've done this in the past and it's worked. But if you know beforehand at these parties, if you've got a bit of an idea of what they're serving, I've had many patients with type 1 diabetes who have done that before, just so they've got a little bit of an idea, so then they can know how many carbs or guess how many carbs and then know where to bolus. The other thing is I've had patients which, I don't know, might feel a bit antisocial, but when the canapes have come around, they will just get all the canapes and then eat them in one go. So just have them at one point in time. So they've got set times when they've eaten, if you know what I mean, rather than like bits and bobs, because you don't know. One might be prawns, there's no carbs, and then there might be some sort of little quiche that's made with pastry. So yeah, that's one thing my patient has done before is keep the plate, get all the canapes, and then maybe you might have 3 of them and then eat them so you'll know when to bolus, and then the main meal comes. Yeah, that's probably one option, but also making sure that you communicate with the people who are making the meals to make sure you get a proper time, because 40 to 50 minutes apart is tricky. Any thoughts, Karen? I'd be curious to know if you've done this before, because it is trial and error.
I think Karen's popped in the chat there, Beck.
Yes.
That I've only had diabetes for a couple of years, so
better.
still don't have a working formula.
Yeah, darling. Yeah, okay. I've tried gathering the canapes, but not always. I understand. I completely understand. I think, when you've got the 3-course meal, if they're timed apart as well, if you can find out exactly what it is as well, that would be another a real added bonus for you, because you know what's coming. Or you could ask if you can have things served at a certain time as well. I always say, if you've this has worked for me a lot. If you say you've got an allergy as well, sometimes they just don't think about diabetes as important. But you've got an allergy and health problems. I need to know exactly when the meal's coming out. When people hear allergy, they tend to freak out, and that's helped some patients as well, because it's important, Karen, that you enjoy yourself. And I feel for you, because you're sitting there thinking carbohydrates and is this a protein and this a fat and how much should I give, rather than enjoying yourself. So if people have some other ideas, I'd really like to hear. For 3-course meals, I've tried a bolus for main and entree at mains. Didn't work well. Tried also to bolus at entree and dessert. Oh, okay, and works a bit better. Okay. Look, I'd prefer you to run a bit higher in blood sugars than hypo. Okay, so that would be my priority, would be not to hypo. If you have a higher reading just for a party, that's much better than a hypo. But that sounds interesting. I'm just thinking about a bolus at entree and then at dessert. If that works better, I'd just keep trying that. And like the other strategies I said, find out what you're being served. Maybe be a bit bulky and say, I really need these meals to come at this time, please. The canapes, not really practical putting together, but that's the only solution I could come up with. But please, Karen, also with the members forum, can you please keep us updated with how these things go, because there's really no set formula. You're absolutely right. And what works for you might not work for anyone else. But I'd love to hear more of your shared successes and also not successes, because there's always someone out there who's tried it and may also have an option. So I'll give people time to add in their ideas. But whatever you don't succeed, keep trying a different strategy. Portion caution. This is, again, like I said, I don't want people to become carb phobic, okay? This is for only if your blood sugars aren't managed well or you're going out too many times and you want some sort of control. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, please. Remember, you guys, you're the experts in your own life. Well, I may be the expert in nutrition and, diabetes. You guys know a lot. And like I said, what works for someone else may not work for you. So we, part of this united journey is that the word you is about you. So the more we hear from you, the more we can tailor the program. And if we get a lot of comments like this, then we might have another webinar. Let's talk about bolusing. What problems have people had with bolusing? Tricks and tips as well. So I'm going to keep that in mind. The other thing I want to mention is our meal plans, just in relation to type 1 diabetes. With our meal plans we're providing, I have done all the recipes with nutrition information, including carbs, protein, fat, etc. But a lot of people with type 1 diabetes, we had one lovely lady write in and said that she would like to know carbs per 100 grams because she's on a pump, and she said it would actually make her life easier with carb counting. So from that feedback, I'm now, when I'm creating recipes, I'm putting per 100 grams for carbs. Okay, so these comments and like what you've said, Karen, will help us review what we're doing, our content, and tailor it better to you. So hopefully per 100 grams for carbs might be useful for people with type 1. So portion caution, or I call it portion distortion as well. May not happen so much at parties because I think it's all the nibbling. But remember, if you are going to a party and there's lots of carbs, it's very easy to do the whole bed of rice or pasta, and then you put your food on top, and that's where you can really overdose in carbs. So the different way of doing that is to still enjoy your carbs, but put your protein option first and maybe your salads and veg, and then just use one scoop. So you've got a scoop on top. So you're not missing out on the carbs. You can see the carbs, but it's a nice contained portion. You probably can guesstimate the carbs too if you're type 1, but then you've slashed the amount of carbs, and they're just fillers. So go for all the protein and veg and scoop a little bit on top. Or you might find for the carb dishes, you might go for a smaller plate and go, well, I'll have a bit of this pasta meal, and then I'll come back and have a bigger plate with the protein and veg and stuff. There was actually the last presentation I did, I mentioned about food sequencing. Someone had a question about it. And there was research that said that if you eat your protein and then veg and then carbs, it actually has a better effect on blood glucose levels, i.e. lower blood glucose levels, or if you start with veg, then protein and carbs. So Karen, wouldn't that be ideal if your entree was a veg soup or a protein dish like prawns or something, and then the main was just, again, your pure protein and veg, low carb veg, and then the dessert was the whack of carbs. So yeah, the research has found that food sequencing can help to keep the blood sugars lower. So like I said, protein, veg, then carbs, or veg, protein and carbs. And that can be another option. And that's actually easier for bolusing because the last option is the carbs. Double carbs brings me to that point. It's very easy to double carb. Let's just say you're saying, I really want dessert. If you're really wanting to cut the carbs, then ditch the starchy carbs for the main and just enjoy the carbs for dessert. So choose a carb, right? And so that means you've only had one carb choice for that party. Or if you don't really like dessert, you could have the starchy carbs and skip the sweet dessert. And then you might have something like cheese because it's pure protein with some assorted berries and a glass of wine. There's almost zero carbs in wine unless it's a syrupy wine. Contrary to belief, people say there's lots of sugar in alcohol. Unless it's a fortified wine, there's not. So can you see, it's just like, I've just forgotten the lovely chap's name, Mick, saying have a beer. Look, we're all about health, but if this strategy works for you, if having one beer fills you up and it stops you from grazing the carbs, then go for it, Mick. And it's the same here. If you find, look, I'm double with the carbs, I'm having the starchy ones and the dessert, then it's okay to maybe have the starchy carbs, skip the dessert and have some cheese with berries and a glass of wine because you're enjoying yourself. And the whole point is, overall, you've reduced your blood sugars. So you are looking to help with your health. Okay, so strategies don't have to be so strict that you can't enjoy yourself. So please remember that. When I ask patients, clients, how to distract themselves, let's say they can't stop grazing in the kitchen, the first thing they'll say is, I have to go and exercise. That's fine, but does that work already? Often they say no. You don't have to pick the healthy choice. It might be cleaning out a cupboard. It might be having a bath, watching a movie. Exercise is great, but remember, you're looking at eating less, so it doesn't have to always be related to exercise and diet, if that makes sense. Next slide. I'm really liking these comments. I'm just thinking if I have missed any. Oh, this happens to me a lot, especially when you're busy. If you've come from work or busy, going to parties hungry, who's ever had that experience? And it doesn't matter how much you say to yourself, don't eat, you just do. And then if you have one drink that stimulates the appetite, then yeah. So if you find that happens, well, really, we've got Buckley's if we go to a party hungry. We've got Buckley's of not overindulging. So a couple of things you can do. I'm sure you've done this before. And then you can time it if you're bolusing as well. Having a low GI high protein snack. And I've put low GI, so have some carbs with it, because I've found if you don't have enough carbs, then you get to the party and that's what you graze on. So if you have a low GI carb, high protein snack, it will really, really sustain you. So it might be a boiled egg with some grainy crackers. It might be some Greek yogurt and berries. tin tuna and whole grain crackers, a couple of Vita Wheats, could be half a sandwich with protein filling. It doesn't have to be big. That's 15 grams of carb, just to, or it could be a low carb slice of bread just to fill you, or a small smoothie with some little bit of milk and some fruit, or a protein drink. Just that line that stomach so you get to the party and you're going to have a few things, but you're not going to eat the horse and chase the rider. And that's what I have to do, because I tend to get to a party hungry and thirsty because you've been running around trying to get things done. So they're just a couple of ideas. Okay. So Karen, I've heard that high protein, high fat meals can cause high blood sugar. Can you prevent this by including carbs in that meal? I've tried that, but it doesn't seem to work. Yeah, it's a good point, Karen. In general, protein and fat should not impact blood sugars, but for some people it does. If you have carbs in the meal, that is going to impact blood sugars because it's carbs. Are you saying here that you've tried carbs with protein and fat? I'll let you write. But I have had, it depends, because patients who might have something that's that is high protein, high fat, it may be crumbed and deep fried. There may be something around it. But as I said before, I had one client whose blood sugars would be up even with 8 grams of proteins. In general, I haven't seen people's blood sugars go up, but there are people, there are people whose sugars go up. So I would, again, it's trial and error. And so it's interesting because you can't, like, if you're being served a meal, you can't just refuse the meal. So I just do the best you possibly can. And as I said before, it's better to have a little higher sugar reading than have a hypo. But it shouldn't. High protein, high fat meals in general shouldn't, but there are some people I've seen whose blood sugars do go up. I'd be trial and error that one for sure. But it depends on, I'd be interested to know the type of foods you might be referring to as well. What's the high protein, high fat choice? Let's have a look. So far, if I ate steak with avocado, it goes up. How interesting. Let me write that down. I'm going to find out. An avo. You know what? Just try an experiment. Have some carbs with it. See what happens. It shouldn't. But again, one of my patients who would have carb-free meals, should call it, they would go up. They would still impact her. So you might be one of those special cases as well. Are you saying you're not bolusing for that? So you keep considering it a carb-free meal? Oh, she's quick. Oh, here we go. Renee, I've had other medical conditions, and sometimes whole grain is not an option as it's too much fiber. What is the best cracker? Yeah, Renee. Look, definitely. A lot of people can't have grains because of diverticulitis or any other bowel issues, or get caught in the dentures, or whatever the case may be. It's okay. The best option would be just like a wholemeal one. Some people who have celiac disease can't have the low GI ones. They have to have rice crackers. So the best tip, Renee, is go for something at wholemeal if you can, but putting protein on that cracker will slow down the breakdown of blood sugars. So that's where you can get the most bang for your buck, is whatever cracker you can do and lots of protein on top, all fat, and that will slow it down. So it's better to have a couple of crackers with lots of protein and fat rather than just a whole handful of crackers. So go for more of the wholemeal-y ones. You can get brown rice crackers. Not everyone likes them. Salada have wholemeal crackers. At my daughter's daycare, they had that. They can't have grains, so they had the wholemeal ones, and I've tried them. They're not too bad. You can get some rye ones as well. But I'd be my biggest tip would be not too many crackers and put a lot of the protein toppings on top. Yes, exactly. Oh, that's you, Karen. Yep. Okay. So So it goes back to my point. The lady who I used to see who, because we'd have we call it carb-free meals to test the background insulin. Okay. And whenever she'd try testing with carb-free meals, I said less than 10 grams of carb per 100 grams. Remember, per serve. Remember at the start of the presentation, I said in general, you won't need to bolus for this. This won't impact the sugars. This is for type 1, but type 2, you don't have to worry, it shouldn't impact blood sugars, but some people do. So for you, Karen, just like my client whose blood sugars went up even with 8 grams of carbs, with a high protein meal as well, I'd say that you're one of those unique patients. But unfortunately, then I'm concerned about what would you bowl, how much. I wouldn't want you hypoing and overestimating how much you need. So I think it's still got to be a little bit of trial and error. The other thing that people can do if they don't want to bolus is a little bit of movement straight after that meal to get the sugars down. But keep experimenting, Karen. I'm really interested in that. That's an interesting case and very frustrating, but that's diabetes, isn't it? It's think of it as experimentation. Oh, big smile there, Renee. You know those crackers, like rice crackers? It's very easy when I'm hungry to eat a whole packet. Can anyone relate to that? So just a couple of crackers, lots of filling on top. Beverage choices as well. I mentioned before it's easy to come to a party very hungry and thirsty. I'm speaking from experience. So, try to hydrate. I try to bring a bottle of sparkling water, so then I'll drink it. If you're drinking alcohol, trying to have water between drinks if you can remember, but also careful of the size of the wine glasses. Now, I said this in my last webinar. I don't know if any of you are on there. I can't see all the names, but my dear mother and auntie, I call them buckets. They pour wine really like a lot in a glass. My mum still thinks there's only 4 glasses to a bottle, and I told her there's 7 to 9 glasses in a bottle, and she still doesn't believe me. So just be careful because, I usually pour my own rather than people pour for me, so I don't have, a big bucket. But just be careful because that's when we can graze a bit more, and then we can overdo it. But alcohol also can lower blood sugars as well. It can stop when the liver's breaking down it stops the liver from breaking down the glucose, so it can really affect you having a hypo. So just being careful. And then you might plan to be the designated driver. If you've got a few parties on and you think, oh, I've really got to watch myself, maybe plan to be the designated driver. So then there's no temptation. Any other comments? Can people relate to that? Same with spirits. It's easy to free pour. You might be pouring a double rather than a single. It's very easy to do. I mean, the wine glasses these days, unless you're going to a restaurant where they pour you a tiny amount for $15 and you don't get a sip more, that's very frustrating. But at home, we tend to pour a lot. So just being careful. Ange, can you relate to all of this? Or do you have perfect behaviours?
No, I don't.
And put us to shame.
No, I can relate to all of this. It's particularly hard at this time of year, I think. People living with diabetes and those of us that don't live with diabetes, it's definitely a harder time of year to control the eating and perhaps the drinking.
Oh, absolutely. And you know how I said before about mindset, and people say this all the time. If you have a well-intentioned loved one telling you what to do, it's easy to get our back up and then say, oh, I'll show you. But, really, I've had to work with some clients who've had to practice a sentence to put them in their place and just say, thank you, I've got it sorted, just to cut them off, because it can be really disappointing if people go on and on and on about, how they're an expert in diabetes and you've been living it for so many years. So just be gentle and kind to yourself and put people in their place if they really try to say, well, should you be eating Auntie Joan's Christmas cake? Just to really wind down and reflect on the year and enjoy people's company. The other thing to keep in mind as well, this might be going back to what we were saying before, if your sugars just won't come down, you can't explain it, doing some light exercise. And that may be just walking around the block. In Australia, we've got summertime now. After the meal, if you can predict that steak and avo is going to pull it up, then do a little gentle walk. That might be also a way of getting sugars down. And if it's just a one-off high, c'est la vie, don't worry about it. We're not looking at perfection. We're looking at safety first. Number one with diabetes is also always being safe. That's why I said we just want to really not have a hypo. If we're going to have a hyper, a high sugar eating, and that's just because you went to a party, well, C'est la vie. We know that's the reason, and that's not going to affect your overall HbA1c if you're having 2 blowouts in the festive season. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm not talking a sugar of 25, but I mean, a sugar of 13 or 14, 15, it happens. It happens. Mm. Any other comments or questions? Does anyone have any tips or anything else they could? Oh, there's. I'm just seeing someone who. Is that a question, Ange? I can't see. No. Does anyone? This is another point. I've had clients who, when you go into the supermarket and it's very deadly, you'll see all the chocolates 50% off, half price, the boxes of celebrations and Lindt. And I've had clients who, try to be really organised and buy all the treats a month before Christmas, but then they find they eat them. So if you find that it's really hard to avoid temptation when we try to stock up on bulk buy, just don't buy them. And, you might have to pay full price, but you're just going to stick to that single portion. And also I've had clients who find they always get chocolates for Christmas and they don't want too many. If you find that you don't want too many of them, then I've had people re-gift them, give them to neighbours, give it to the grandkids, give it to anyone, because we just don't want you to become disappointed. But if you never get chocolates and you got a box of chocolates and you want them, then go for it. It's just a one-off. But I find I get lots of they never used to in the hospital I worked at. I always never got chocolates. I never got chocolates. I got wine. So I was happy with that. And one patient bought me cheese once because he knew I was a cheeseaholic. So I got cheese and wine.
I think I can see Deborah Pickering has her hand up there.
Oh, yes, please. Deborah, what would you like to say with new activity? Let's have a look. I want to see what she's saying. Oh, yeah, hand up, Deborah. Yeah, please. Go for it. Type away. You tell me if you can see it, Ange.
I'm unsure currently what my computer is doing. When I was sharing it, it's gone absolutely crazy. I've got things everywhere. But if Deborah, you're still there, if you wanted to pop yourself off mute and actually ask a question, please feel free to do that.
Give her a chance.
I can maybe take you.
Oh, I'm just reading I've just had a little bit of reading some research here for Karen. So we know that protein doesn't break down to form glucose in the blood, but there is some research that's starting to show that both fat and protein may cause blood glucose to rise, but 3 to 5 hours after a meal. So it's delayed. It's that delayed stomach emptying. Yeah, so it's more of the timing. Yeah. Okay, so it does. It can. Yep. I'm going to read a bit more into it. I'm just reading here. I'm going to have a little look into that. And that might be an article I can write about. Very, very good. Very interesting. Has Deborah written? No. Does anyone have, feel free to type, a favourite meal you have at Christmas? Oh, hello. Yeah. I can hear on the outside. Hello.
Hello.
Is that
Can you
Deborah?
hear? Yes.
Welcome.
I'm absolutely hopeless with phones and meetings. I can never seem to work out where you click, what you do to talk on this thing or to type.
What would you like to share or questions? I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, my question is, whenever I tend to go, which I'm not a real party animal to be truthful, but when we do go out, say for dinner, yeah, we'll go out with friends, and I'll always have a cocktail. But the cocktails just seem to be really high in sugar,
Yeah.
and I've tried and tried with the bartenders to try and get. I was like, oh, I'm diabetic. Could you try and get me one? And they go, oh yes, I'll be able to make it. So that it's not very sweet. And then you
Oh,
get
no.
it, you think, yeah, right.
You've got no idea.
So,
Oh.
is there any that you know of that are nice but not so loaded with sugar, or is it just an impossibility? Because I don't really like wine. I'm not a wine drinker at
Doesn't have
all.
to be. Do you like martinis?
Yes, I quite like a martini.
All right, go for it. I'm just double checking here. But martinis, because you want to go for something. I'm not a cocktail person. I find them too. I don't have a sweet tooth, so my best friend loves cocktails, and this was in my going out days. Um, I could never have it, but I'd always go for a martini because it's dry. Let me just see, just double check. Can't see martini, but it should be 0.6 grams a cup. Yeah, it's yeah, martini, darling. Go for a martini.
Okay. And okay, I'll
And three
definitely do
olives.
that.
I always ask for 3 olives from the bar. Well, this is what I used to. I don't go out anymore because I'm a busy working mum. But I used to always ask for 3 olives in the martini.
Well, I probably won't do that because I hate olives, but
But martini, yeah, because it's just got pure alcohol, there's no carby, like syrupy, sweet things added to it. Capricoses, I'm trying to think what's in a caprico. Do you know what? That's another article I'm going to write about. So Karen's got me the idea of the protein and fat because there is research that does say it does. So I need to read more into that because I only know anecdotally from patients. So protein and fat. And now I'm going to look at low carb cocktails.
cool. And
Yeah.
the other thing I'll quickly ask you is, like, I've only been diagnosed as a diabetic, but I'm not on insulin or anything like that yet. But
Yep.
just recently we went down to Coldplay in Sydney, or my daughters and
Lucky
I.
you.
Yes, we had a great time. But I found, because my daughters didn't really want to walk too far to go and get breakfast or lunch or whatever, then we sort of just went up around the next street and we'd find a cafe. And of course, it was all bad, bad, bad. So I kept getting spikes because I've got one of those things, the blood glucose things on your arm. And
Right. Yep.
and so it would sort of spike up to about 15, and I'd be like, well, I won't swear, but, oh dear.
Oh dear.
Yes, oh dear. And so I would run up and down the lobby the hallway outside my room. And it was amazing how
It was.
quickly it went down. Like, it was like,
Wow.
if it was like 15.1, I'd only have to do 2 laps and it'd go down to 15. And then I'd do 2 more laps and it'd be down to 14.9, So
Wow.
that's what I was doing. But then I read somewhere that, oh, gee, when your blood sugar's high, you shouldn't really be exercising. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. So when they say high, what do they mean high? Is 15 high?
Look, it's all relative. For some people, that's super high because they never get a reading over double figures. But for other people, 15's kind of every day. And that's more people with type 1 diabetes. It's not easy to always manage it. Look, I'd say it's only when you feel ill. If your sugars are high and you feel ill, then you don't exercise. But if you're having you're having a real great time and it's just because of something that you had, then a bit of exercise is fine. That's what I've mentioned before when we're talking about Karen's example. You might go and do a bit of exercise, see if it comes down. So I think it's a great strategy. Look, 15 is high, but like I said, for some people, it's no big surprise.
Okay,
And if you can pinpoint, look, I had this carby meal and this sugary cocktail, it's going to go high. Yeah. So I think your strategy is brilliant. But if you have a fever, feel sick, got symptoms, then you don't exercise.
Okay.
Then you're thinking something's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, the exercise, not just that, like when I go to hydrotherapy, if I go to hydrotherapy just even after having lunch, it's just amazing how it lowers your blood sugar. It's really I'm quite blown away about the fact just how much the exercise makes a difference.
That's really,
So
that's thanks for sharing, Deborah, because people sometimes think you have to just definitely hydrotherapy because you've got the warmth of the pill and you're moving, you're doing a lot of resistance training, and that makes your insulin more sensitive. So it's a brilliant type of exercise. But I love the idea of walking up and down the corridor or the hallway. I think that's brilliant. Any sort of movement will get it down, and I think if that can help you, calm a bit down, because people often get a bit disheartened when your sugars go up, but that's going to happen with diabetes. But I think any type of movement, if you're well, is brilliant. I just had another idea for do you like gin?
yes, I do love gin.
Okay, gin and a diet tonic, or gin, soda water with just a dash of the lime. Like it will be syrupy, but it's just a dash of the lime. You'll get a couple of grams of carbs. Renee, here we go. Renee, I like vodka, mineral water, and lime juice cordial. Yeah, or a dash of raspberry for sweetener. Brilliant. So again, you've got vodka or gin, which is just the spirit. Then you're adding the mineral water or soda water, which is 0 carbs. And then, if you're using lime juice, fresh lime juice, it might be a bit tart for you because gin's quite, bitter. But a splash of the cordial, and if you just tell them just a little bit, it won't be enough carbohydrate to raise the sugars.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you for your help. Okay, now how do I stop talking to you?
You got to put yourself on mute, my love. So, the mic, go up to the top and go to the right.
Yes, like a little mic thing there. Okay, I'll hit that. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. You've just given me an article to write. So,
all right. I'm glad I helped. Bye-bye.
Isn't it interesting? You hear these presentations, and I'm giving people cocktail ideas, or this is what it's about. It's not about having to be on something strict and not enjoy yourself. This is about healthy, safe strategies to improve those blood sugars. Is that what they talk about at Alcoholics Anonymous? I don't know, Mick. Are you being funny there? Any more ideas? Please put it in the chat. Please put it in the chat, because this is the thing. It is the festive season, and alcohol, particularly in this country, does feature. So we first of all have to be safe, but also making sure we've got options that will help with those blood sugars. Definitely. They do have. The problem is with beer as well, I think I mentioned before, just because it might be lower in carb, just be careful because they can be higher in alcohol content. Just being careful of that. So I'm just going to write, I've got 2 topics to write about now. Any other questions or any favourite dishes that you make, or party dishes that you take with you? It might be a healthy choice that that works. It's always nice to have something prepared. Like I said, I usually do a cheese platter with lots of the veg. I've got 2 people I know with diabetes, so I always make sure, and I like it anyway, cheese, the antipasto sort of veg, olives, nuts, berries. It looks so colourful and lovely, so even healthy food can look quite attractive compared to all the beige snacky things. So I've got 5 minutes left. See if there's anyone else who has questions or any comments. Ange, do you have a favourite dish that you have at Christmas?
I'm the same as you, Beck. I'm the antipasto charcuterie board maker for my family.
Charcuterie, yes.
Yes.
Baby cheeses.
Yes, the cheeses and the antipasto kind of, the marinated
good.
vegetables, and some breadsticks and those kind of things. That's my thing, and making salads. Known for making a good salad. So
that's good.
That's me.
You'll be popular. Oh, Mick, here we go. I get asked to bring chips and lollies, none of what I should eat. Well, you can. Anyone can. But, yes, we know will affect the sugars. So if you say you shouldn't eat, I don't know if that makes you rebel, Mick. But you can do it. You can eat chips and lollies, but we know that it can impact the sugars. So just remember, everyone, that mindset strategy. It may sound really simple, but think of yourself in situations where you've gone to a party and you wanted to do this, and you've told yourself, I should do this, and then you do that, the complete opposite. It's not you, it's the thinking. And usually it's because you've just parented yourself and you said, right, you're not going to have those lollies and you're not going to have those chips, and the next minute you're having them. Or someone told you you shouldn't have them because you've got diabetes, and then you think, oh, I'll show you. So just remember that thinking is also a really important strategy during the festive season. It needs to marry with a behavioural strategy. And so you might be just reminding yourself why you're doing this. Change is not easy. Food tastes good, but we also have to have on our forefront of why we're doing this. Okay, so the reasons why you're trying to manage your diabetes. It's not about the numbers. It's what the numbers do for you. I want to have good blood sugar levels for this reason, to go on that holiday, to retire healthily and happily, to lose weight for that wedding, to have energy for the kids or grandkids. So always think about yourself as a human. It's not just about the numbers. You're not a number. It's what do the numbers do for you? And that's about the impact on your life. And having that in your mind makes it more interesting and more doable to start changing those behaviours that we all know. We all know what we have to do. We do. You've asked some very good questions here, and you've given some great ideas. It's about having the mindset to do it. Renee, I always have protein bars in my bag in case there is nothing to eat when I go out. If I can't prepare anything, I know I can look after myself. Brilliant strategy, Renee. So protein bars, a little snack in the bag, and they really are filling. I think that's an excellent strategy, a really good strategy to curb the appetite. Yep, brilliant. And, it's something that you can keep in the handbag for a long time, or the what do you call it? The glove box. So brilliant. Great idea. Oh, my goodness, it's 7:59. That's gone very fast. It always does.
It has gone fast. I think, have we got any other questions that anyone has? Let's turn my camera back on. I don't know. Yes, I am. I'm back on, I think. Have we got another in the chat, perhaps? Is it more important to keep the blood sugar steady or low?
Oh, good question. So what we don't want is peaks and troughs in blood sugars. So when you say low, we don't want too low below 4, because 4 is the floor. That's what I say. So anything below 4 is a hypo. Steady is good. Okay, you'll feel better when your blood sugars are steady rather than going 4 and then up to 10. So steady is good. And if you've got the Libre, it can help you to see trends. And that's the good thing about having a CGM. You can see that the trend going up or the trend going down. Flatlining, being steady, is where you want to be, rather than big peaks and troughs. You can go up and down a little bit. It's going to go like this, but you don't want big peaks and troughs. That's where it's not good control, and you'd feel rubbish if you're swinging high and low. Very good question. My pleasure. So I think that's everyone, is it? Deb? I mean, calling you Deb now because I saw Deb's name. It's too late. My brain is shutting down. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I think Deb does have her hand up. But what I do have, getting all these notifications pop up on my computer, which isn't helpful, is a survey. So we ask people to do a survey. So what I will do, if I can, is pop the link for the survey in the Q&A section if everybody can see that. I'll also put it in the chat section for those that can't see the Q&A. I know with Teams, we're still getting used to using Teams. We used to use Zoom. Teams is a little bit different depending on if you've got the browser or you do have the app installed on your computer. So I'll put the link in there. It's just a SurveyMonkey link to a very short survey with regard to the webinar and the events that we're holding. So I'll pop that in there. And so that hopefully has come up. Yes, it has. And I'll also, for the people that can only see the chat function, I'll pop that in there as well. So the survey link is in both of those. If you could click on that link, it's a safe link to click on and then fill in that survey, that would be amazing. And we can also, if you don't get time to click on that, I can also send all of our attendees out an email tomorrow with that link in, I believe, to fill that in.
Okay.
Deb, did you have another question there before we wrap up?
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it to work again. Oh, my God. I wasn't so much a question. I was actually going to tell you that I've found these. I'm actually down in New South Wales now. I'm from Queensland, but we went to this shop and I found these really good crackers, but they're not. They wouldn't be good for somebody with diverticulitis or whatever you call it, because they're seeds. But they're called OB Finest 3-seed crisps, and they've got pumpkin and sesame and flax seeds in them. But they only have 0.5 grams of carbs per serving.
Mm-hmm.
And the sugars are 0.2 grams.
It's a great choice.
So the serving size is only 15 grams. So I just thought I'd tell people about that, because I thought, wow, you don't often find crackers that you can actually eat that aren't too bad as far as carbs go.
Very true. No, it's really good, and I bet you they're expensive, but they'll be worth it because
they were expensive. Yes, they were expensive.
Were they from IGA? They usually have better. They usually have really good assortments of crackers.
No, it was Coles, actually.
Okay.
We're sort of at this place called South Beach. It's near Byron Bay. And
lovely.
there's a Coles there. So, and it just seems to have pumpkin seed kernels, white sesame seeds, flax seeds, psyllium husk, and a thickener, which of course is not that great, but anyway, and then some salt. So that's it.
Thanks, Dad. That's great.
That's all right. But anyway, I'll let you go because, I've run over your time.
That's fine. We love questions, and these are the things that, I can't get to every, supermarket. Some of the times there's variations. So knowing new products is brilliant. I learned too.
Yes, well, I've got nothing to do with OB Finest. I'm not trying to flog somebody's product with a friend. I just happened to buy them. Yeah, I just saw them and thought, oh, they look yummy. All right, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks, Deborah. I think there's one last question in here, a comment from Renee.
Yep, I'm just doing it now.
Just got that one there?
Yep. So Renee's got a brilliant question. Breakfast proteins, I only ever have eggs and don't like yogurt. So I've said I've got a high protein granola, and one serve with a bit of milk has the same amount of protein as 2 eggs. So, and I'm not flogging this product. It's just a recipe I've come up with. I'm not selling it, but I can provide that recipe. I actually have a video making it. So I'll see what I can do. I'll chat to Ange after this. Another egg dish is shakshuka, which is like the Mediterranean or Middle Eastern egg and veg dish, which is super easy and yum. Protein smoothie. So whether you make it with milk and fruit with a bit of protein powder. Ricotta or cottage cheese, high protein on a low carb, high fiber slice of toast. You can add some sliced tomato or avocado, or a sliced cheese and melt it. Sliced cheese on toast with tomato and, some mushrooms or something. So there are a couple of ideas. Yeah, good question. And you know what? When you look at the Asian diet, whenever I go to an Asian airport, I always have a traditional Asian breakfast, which is, miso soup with the tofu if it's Japanese, or the Indonesian will have chicken. So maybe if you're flying via Asia, check out what they eat. It's usually savory. I need to find those crackers now.
Good cracker.